Hello, today we will be learning how to plot in R. One of R's main functions is to plot graphs efficiently and very aesthetically for the human eye to see and read. That's one reason why a lot of people learn R is to get the best graphs that they can and create them with the best programs. Thus, learning to plot is a skill that every R programmer should have. Um, so there's two ways to plot a graph with R. There's the plot function and then the lines function. So we can see both right here. So right here, or let's start with this one up here. So we see that plot x equals mydata. So this is the CSV file that I'm plotting. We will also learn how to title our created graphs using the title function. So let's go ahead and start with this plot function just so we know how to initially utilize the plot function. So to use the plot function, you need to define what values are going to be on the x-axis and what values are going to be on the y-axis. And to define these values, we must use the columns in your CSV data frame because that's where we're going to get the variables and the integers from to graph. So if we look at my code, we see I have said plot x equals mydata $, date of. So I'm getting the values from the date of for my x-axis. For my y-axis, I'm getting my integers from the red value. So if we go back here, the R here is the red. So I'm getting all of these, 2217, 2221, all of those are going to be my integers for the y-axis. For the x-axis, I'm getting all these dates. So I'm plotting this against this. All right, so moving on. So xlab is the function that we utilize to create a label for our graph. So you can see that I used a very descriptive label. I said date of. So once again, this pretty much just correlates specifically with the name of my variable. So that's very easy for me. Ylab, once again, ylab is going to be how you can define the title of your y-axis. So I titled mine IntegerValue because I want the integer value of the red color. So type equals L. So that just means that there's a bunch of types that you can use for the lines, such as dashed line, just straight up bold line. You can make it thicker and so on. So the type I'm using is just the stock normal type, the ones that you see on the majority of graphs. So moving on, we see that the type and LTY are just multiple ways that the lines can be made, such as thickness and length. The call command can define the type of color you want your line to be. So as you can see, I made this color red to correlate with my red value because that's the value that I'm plotting. So it's going to be very easy for me to find because red is going to be with red. And then down here, I'm plotting more values. I'm plotting clear, I'm plotting green, and I'm plotting blue. So I need to make sure I have the ability to easily identify in between the two when they're all on the same graph. So once again, that can be done through color, that can be done through this type function, it can be done to the LTY function, which is the thickness. There's multiple ways. I just stuck with color because it's the easiest and it correlates with what I'm graphing, which are color values, so it correlates the best for me. So the next function below that is the lines function. So you only use the lines function if you want to put more than one line on a plot. So it enables you to put multiple lines on a single plot. So this plot function essentially creates your x and y axis at the start, and then that's the whole plot. It creates the whole plot. However, the lines are specifically creating lines on the initial plot that we already created. So here, the lines function enables you to input more lines onto a single plot, and you simply have to define what columns you want to get the values from again. So I get it from DateOf, so I'm essentially keeping one column constant, right? Or one where I'm getting the data from, one is constant, DateOf, and then I'm changing the other value on the y-axis of what I'm plotting. I'm plotting the blue value against the data, and then the green value against the dates, then clear value against the dates, and the red value against the dates. So that's going to really enable me to see the difference, because if we're just going to use different values for the x and the y axis, then we're really not going to be able to tell or identify any correlations or regressions between any of them. So once again, lines, and then I used mydata, and then from mydata I'm pulling the DateOf column for the x one, and then for the y axis I'm going to use mydata, and then one of the color values. I kept the type constant, I kept the LTY constant, and then I changed the colors. Once again, I talked about why I did that previously. We also see that we have the title function here, so that's very simple. You just type in title and then equals and then the string of what you want it to be. So that's just going to be like on top of the graph above everything is going to be this. So the x-axis, once again, your label for the x-axis is going to be on that side. So yeah, that's pretty much how you can plot with R. So everything from here to here is pretty much what you need to run a plot. So I've pasted my code below if you have any questions, and please remember that this code is going to vary on everybody's computer and files, because I named my files different names than yours. So copy pasting my code does not guarantee that your program is going to have the same output or even work. So remember, just if you have any questions, feel free to comment below, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. But if you're still having trouble, you can look down at my code that I used, and then you can simply just change up the names of the CSV file. So if you see here, here's the code that I used, everything from here to here. And then another way to do this is right here with the myplot function. So here we talk about how we can draw horizontal and vertical lines. So this is something we need to focus on as well. So when we're drawing horizontal lines, we just type, you just define your variable, and then you say geometric h line. H obviously stands for horizontal. Then AES, and then y-intercept equals 0, because it's a horizontal line is never going to touch the x-axis, only the y-axis. So then your color, you can type that any color you want, and then you have to define what plot you want it to go on. So as you know, there's myplot will create your initial plot, and then lines will give you the multiple lines on there. So they got the line and they defined the line here, and then I went on to define my plot, and then on top of the plot is where I added the line I created, and then I just printed my plot. So for a vertical line, it's all the same thing, except you're changing the x-intercept, and then you're changing the h to a v here. And once again, defining the line first, then going on to define the plot, and then adding my line onto the plot. And once again, if I simply change this to so something like this, then I'm getting the same thing as this. I could skip all of this, because all I'm doing is defining the horizontal line, and then I'm going to define the vertical line, and then I'm going to add both of them at the same time on the same plot, because that's essentially what we're trying to do, is compare the two lines. So here, if you wanted to make a line using like a mathematical linear equation, once again, everybody knows the equation y equals mx plus b. So m is your slope, and then b is your y-intercept. So here we got the slope is -2, the intercept is 150, and then we say my line, and then geometric, which this pretty much just calls the GeoM here just stands for geometric, but it pretty much just says that you're going to create some type of line or shape. And then AB line, slope, you define the slope, and then you define the y-intercept, and then the color. And once again, color is optional. It'll just do black if you don't really define anything. But then you can just add the, after you define the line, you just add it onto your plot that you created initially. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you still don't understand anything, just take a look at my code. Change up the file names, of course, because my names are going to be different than yours. But if you have any questions, feel free to comment or contact me. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.